Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time, back with the one and only Mr. Greg Dickerson, who is out and about doing deals and doing work. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good, man. Yeah, I'm out of quarantine, so I can be free and roam around.
Yeah, you folks, if you didn't watch last week, Greg had just caught the bug, and his voice was a little scratchy, but he sounded much better today. That's good to see.
Thank you. Yeah,
Awesome.
man. Good to be here.
So one of the things that I have seen take off on my channel analytics, right? When you go to your channel, you look at analytics. It appears a lot of the videos that folks are watching um, have the term depression, right? Economic depression in them. We have gone from talking about a recession is coming, winter is here, which you and I have done a couple of times. It seems a few people, actually, I should say, a lot of people actually believe that we could be in for an economic depression, a la, the Great Depression. So I wanted to ask you: do you think A, we're in a depression? B, do you fear a depression in the future? And we'll start from there. So what do you think? Depression?
No, I don't think so. I really don't even think that's possible
Yeah.
anymore. Especially like the Great Depression. Definitely nothing to that degree. But again, you define it with technical terms. With so much declination in GDP for so many quarters or months extended. 10% reduction or more. So I mean, could you see growth decline potentially? But I mean, the economy's strong. I mean, that's the problem that we're facing right now. Inflation is so high. With a strong economy, the Fed is trying to do everything they can to destroy demand, but as prices go up, it creates more, uh, production.
Mm-hmm.
Sales are up, things like that, because prices are up. But consumers are still consuming. Demand is still strong. The world is still open and doing things. It would take a significant, severe economic event or global macro, geopolitical event, like a major world war to kind of create something like that. And usually war stimulates economy. So,
Yeah.
uh, in response. So, I mean, I just don't think a depression is in the cards anytime soon. And even a deep recession, I don't feel like is in the cards.
Yeah, when I look at the look again, every time I see stuff, I always question myself. I'm like, what am I missing? What blind spots do I have? And near as I can tell, the talk track is something like this. The Fed is going to do what they're going to do. They're going to kick us in the nuts. They're going to take the funds rate to 4, 5, 6%, because again, a lot of people are kind of painting, hey, the only way to break inflation is you have to get the funds rate above inflation, a la Volcker in the 80s, right? Hence, people are talking about Fed funds rate at 6, 7, 8%. I'm like, not sure I see that, but okay, I'll follow your logic. And then that is going to crush demand to such an extent that unemployment will explode and all of these other bad things. What I always scratch my head on is, don't you think the Fed would cut rates almost immediately if all that other stuff started to happen, right? If they got the funds rate to 6, 7, 8%, they got a lot of room to cut. The reason they're trying to come off zero is so they have room to cut next time we have an economic event. So I just get confused when I hear, a lot of people are just, I don't know, just they like scary things, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's shock factor and clicks and things like that. And, some people are just, you know, doomsdayers and,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of extreme in some of these views. But, you, you know, inflation is a problem. The Fed has to get it down. They're not going to stop till they get it down, and they can't back off. They can't pivot. They can't do anything till inflation's down. The question is, has inflation peaked? And if so, has it plateaued or is it going to reverse? So that's kind of where we're at now. We're going to find out in a couple of days where CPI is,
Tomorrow.
and tomorrow when CPI comes out. And I think it's still going to be in the eights. Is it going to drop a little bit? I don't know. I mean, the only thing that's really come down is gas.
Yeah.
Some commodities have come down, but we're talking about August numbers that are
Mm-hmm.
being presented. And then you and I know housing has not really contracted at all from rents,
Mm-hmm.
or anything like that. That's continued to go up. Some markets here and there, are contracting a little bit. But to me, I don't think inflation has come backwards. I think maybe it's peaked, maybe it's plateaued, but I don't see it coming down anytime soon.
Yeah, inflation is one of those big things. And again, as somebody who has an econ degree, I have to admit, one of the things that I always scratched my head about, even way back in the 90s when I was studying this stuff, was why the hell does the Fed have core inflation and headline inflation? I think we're about to find out for the first time in my adult life, because again, what we're going to see is headline inflation could be monkeyed with. What do I mean by that? Well, the president of the United States has decided to release 1 million barrels of gas from the reserve, and that means more supply. And when you have more supply, demand, the prices come down. Unfortunately, I fear what happens in the winter is they're going to stop that because eventually it goes to zero, and then they're going to have to replenish it, I would hope. And you're going to do that in the winter months when demand goes up for heating oil and all these things. So I'm afraid we might see kind of that kind of comes down and then rips higher, because again, food, we've seen a lot of California and other markets are reporting crop yields at record lows around the world. I'm afraid that we may get, the headline number coming down, but it rips higher in the winter. But more importantly, I think core, this is my biggest fear. Headline comes down, core goes up. And then, the market rips higher because people don't understand. And then the Fed waxes with 75 next week. So sorry about that. That's
they're going 75 regardless.
I
The Fed's doing 75. It doesn't matter what inflation shows, they're going for it.
I agree.
And we already saw, headline down, core up last print, right? So we already know that's happening, and the Fed knows that they're nowhere near where they need to be. And the biggest indicator, so the other point of a depression is you need serious unemployment. Well, we still have 2 to 1 jobs available to people willing to take them. So until that comes back into balance, you're not going to get prices down, and you're not going to even talk about a recession, much less depression. So it's still a very unhealthy, unbalanced labor market. It's a very unhealthy housing market still. I mean, the only thing that's really come down is gas. I mean, that's really it. Food has not come down. Food's through the roof. If you listen to, if you go to the grocery store, you see it. If you listen to restaurant operators, Tillman Fertitta was on CNBC last week, and I mean, his food's through the roof. He's like, I can't get help. I'm having to pay, double what we used to have to pay. He's like, hey, we're doing good and sales are strong. He said, but a lot of it's because we're raising prices and, people are getting out, they're still spending. So the demand destruction has not occurred at scale in the economy yet, like the Fed wants and like the Fed needs. And they're not happy about what the markets are doing. The markets are bouncing every time the Fed says, hey, we're going to raise rates. The market's like, yeah, whatever. And go ahead and rally.
Psych.
Yeah. So I there's a lot of work to be done out there, and it takes time for what the Fed's doing to kind of work its way in the economy. But, to the point of where does the Fed funds rate need to go to do real demand destruction is an interesting question. And I don't think anybody has the answer, because we're in a very unusual, unprecedented time right now with zero textbook, zero ability to understand what's going on. And you have experts and analysts and economists all over the map. Half of them say oil's going to 120, half of them say it's going to 50. I mean, nobody knows.
It is again, what is really odd about this time, and I only know this because I studied what I call my 52-year spreadsheet. We're experiencing something that, unless you were, working in the early 80s, we haven't seen this before, where the Fed is trying to get ahead of this thing, because we had 40 years of, declining rates, and, that's over, at least for the short term. So it's, the question about how the terminal rate, which means, what's the peak of the Fed funds rates, is a great question. I think 4% is an easy answer because they've all said it. I think that they're all saying the same things. We are going to 4%. Some of them say in December, some say in January, but they're going to 4%. Where do they go from there? I mean, that's a great question. Could you?
Well, number one, where do they go? But two, they're not backing off. So
no, exactly.
There's still a lot of pricing going on, and projections that say the Fed's going to back off next year after they hit 4.5. That's the thing. The Fed is not backing off because they can't, because 4, like you just said, that's not going to get it done for inflation.
No, if you get a Fed funds rate of 4, inflation is at 6, you still have a -2 interest, right? It's crazy. So I guess the question I kind of ask, and I've never asked anybody this question, so you're first. Do you think we could see next year the Fed's funds rate at 5, have a 5 on it? I've never even thought about that. Do you think it could have a 5 on it next year?
Yeah, absolutely. If inflation is still in the 8% range, 8% range, and it's not coming down, it's continuing to plateau, and the job market is still unbalanced, and the housing market hasn't, corrected, and things like that, which, I mean, it's going to take a lot of work to get the housing market in line.
Yeah. Talking about a depression, I might as well end on this. I think while the general economy being in a depression is unlikely, given the data we have in front of us today, I think the housing market for the next 6 months will be in a depression. I think over the course of the next 6 months, because rates are going to go up, we're going to have supply destruction like never before. We have demand destruction like never before. We are going to see transactions crash by 45, 50, 55%, which I would call a depression. That's going to peel 4 or 5% off of GDP and lead the economy into a recession. What do you think of all that?
Yeah, housing is a big, economic driver. So a lot of money is pumped into the economy, a lot of jobs. So we are seeing, destruction there. We're seeing mortgage companies on the brink of bankruptcy. We're seeing mortgage applications obviously non-existent. Traffic around the country in most areas is way down. But the interesting thing is that sellers are pulling back just as fast as buyers are pulling back.
Exactly.
So, that's killing transactions, obviously. The question is, what does that do to the economy and what does it do to housing? Because builders have stopped too. So, what are builders waiting for? Builders are waiting for land to adjust and they're waiting for construction costs to adjust. So, as builders are pulling back, they're laying people off. So, subcontractors and employees and everybody, those prices are going to adjust because they're going to need work. And it's kind of a natural construction cycle that we go through, peaks and valleys. But here's the interesting thing: the only way we're going to get inventory to the market in this environment is through new construction. So that's where your real changes in demand destruction are going to be done. Land prices will change because people need to sell. Landowners are going to need to sell. They're going to have to adjust their prices because builders just won't buy. Developers won't pay. I'm not going to pay for land what we did a year ago, 6 months ago. Now it's half. Literally, it's half of what it was previously. Construction costs, we're already seeing labor, copper, all these things come down. Labor rates will start coming down with subs as they need work. So that's going to bring a balance back into new construction pricing relative to the rates where they are, at that time. So that's going to damage resale values big time.
Okay.
So a lot of people are going to, have already lost their equity based on interest rates because they can't refinance, they can't tap it. So as new construction comes on, and this is how the balance changes, right? When do you build? When it's cheaper to build than it is to buy.
Yeah.
When do you buy? When it's cheaper to buy than it is to build. So, inventory obviously makes a big difference there. But I think you're going to see construction costs come down to where new construction housing is going to come down again, and it's going to be cheaper to buy and build than it was, than it will be to get a resale because you can't get them. Yeah. So that's where your real correction in the housing market is going to come from.
Yeah, I think the housing market, what I'm starting to talk about now is entered the frozen winter. I don't really. There's got to be a sexy vocabulary word which I'm drawing a blank on. So again, we're housing is frozen. I believe it's frozen until like March 15th, right? The spring selling season, and then we're going to find out. Yeah, housing Mageddon. Thank you. That's something like that, right? I think this all comes to a head in the spring because right now, as you said, we have a bunch of sellers who are just taking it off, going, "Hey, we're going to wait for the winter. We missed the top. We'll wait for the spring," because they're not in a rush. They don't have to sell.
Well, it's not only that. It's not just missing it. It's like, where do I go?
If exactly. I can't buy anything.
I've got 2.5%, 3%, 4% mortgage right now. So I'm not going to go get a 5 or 6% mortgage and pay, market prices when there's nothing to choose from. So people are like, they're stuck. They can't sell. So it's some of it is a desire, in terms of, hey, if I can get these crazy prices, I'll sell. I know a couple of people that did that, put their houses on the market, said, hey, if I can get what I want, whatever, and they pulled it off. But yeah, there's nowhere for them to go. The rates are way higher. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And then what's the other option? You rent somewhere and rents are exploding because there's no supply of single family rentals. It's an interesting time. So again, I do think the housing market, 15% of GDP based on what I've read is entering a depression. It's going to be a rough 6 months. And then we'll see. We'll see what happens in March. Where are rates? Where's unemployment? All of these other things. So going to be a lot of fun.
Construction's where it's at, man. Get ready. Builders out there. If you haven't, if you want to get in the business, time is coming because it's all going to adjust. Prices are coming down. Labor is going to be available more so, as it changes. So, we're going to have to build our way out of it just like we always do.
How about, does that include kind of the infill stuff? Like just small stuff like a guy like me would do?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Infill. I mean, I'm working with people all over the country doing infill. That's what I specialized in, nice. Most of my career. Infill is a great little niche. The big builders don't do that.
Yeah.
And it works for build to rent as well as, build to sell.
How about building ADUs? Same deal?
ADUs are a little different depending on where you are in your area. Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. As I'm finding. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. but yeah, ADUs are great for accessory, for rentals especially, and generational housing
Mhm.
for in-laws,
Yep.
kids, whatever. So that works as well.
Very cool. I have an ADU that I believe just got finally approved about eight. It's taken almost 9 months. I think 8.5 months. So
That's
uh,
ridiculous.
yeah, we may be breaking ground in the winter because labor's cheaper, lumber's cheaper. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all good.
Yeah, it worked out. Everybody, yeah, it's working out. Everything's coming back down, and
Yeah,
it's
they
going to be
actually
available.
saved
So you're
me
going
money. They saved me money by
yeah,
waiting 4 months. Greg, where can people find you?
yeah, GregDickerson.com.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy.